Hi, my name is Annie Palland, and we're here in 97 Orchard in the lower level. And right now, as we speak, construction crews are busy at work reconstructing and recreating the saloon of John and Caroline Schneider, who ran this amazing saloon from 1864 until 1886. And as part of our upcoming exhibit, Shop Life, we'll be focusing on John and Caroline's world. Caroline Schneider was such an important part of the saloon. When John Schneider announced that the saloon would be opening in November of 1864, he invited his fine friends, he invited superb musicians, and he talked about the wonderful lunch that would be available. Free lunch was such an essential part of saloon culture. And Caroline Schneider's work, shopping in the marketplace, coming back to this kitchen, and we're standing right now in what will be her kitchen and what was her kitchen. This is a place where she made the wonderful foods that attracted members, attracted the citizens of Klein Deutschland. So on Tuesday, April 3rd at 6:30 p.m., we're going to be doing a special tenement talks, a behind-the-scenes look at John and Caroline Schneider's lives. We're going to focus on Caroline's work and the work that Caroline did to make this saloon a living room for the community as well as a home for her family. An essential part and the most tasty part of this evening is that we're going to be tasting some of the foods that Caroline would have made. Sarah Lohman, a wonderful educator here at the tenement and an eminent food historian, has cooked up Lebkuchen, a special cookie that would have been luring Klein Deutschland residents into the saloon 150 years ago. Come join us as we taste these foods again. Let's go over to 103 Orchard Street to the demonstration kitchen and see what she's cooking up.
Hi, my name is Sarah Lohman, and I'm an educator here at the Tenement Museum, but I also have a very odd specialty. I'm a historic gastronomist, which means I focus at taking older recipes and updating them for a modern kitchen, and I do it just out of a love of discovering some of the secrets of the past. So I was so excited when we started working on a restoration of Caroline's kitchen, because there's this whole idea of free lunch and what Caroline Schneider would be making for the patrons of the saloon, of her husband's saloon. So yeah, her husband is there behind the bar, you know, knowing everybody, but it's really Caroline that would be making the whole saloon kind of run and tick and make sure that that free lunch table is always stocked with food. So right now I'm making a Lebkuchen recipe, and Lebkuchen are traditional honey spice cookie that Caroline maybe knew from home, maybe she learned from her mother, and this is something that could have been on the free lunch table as a little delicious dessert. So it's kind of a different cookie recipe, and it's one that's become quite popular here at the Tenement Museum. A lot of people really like it since I started making it, but it starts in a strange way. Over here, this is about a pint of honey, which is about 2 cups, and 1.33 pounds of brown sugar. Now, in older recipes like this one, they do a lot of measurement in volume and in weight as opposed to standardized by cup measurements like we do now. So for me, having a kitchen scale is an indispensable tool when I'm working with these recipes. So this is going to be almost all the liquid that goes into the cookie, and we're almost making a caramel. Now, the little lumps that you see in there too, those are chopped almonds. This is a recipe that is full of, well, the honey flavor comes through in the end, it's full of spice, and it's full of citrus too. So it has a really interesting depth of flavor. All right, this looks pretty good. So I'm taking this off the heat, and I'm bringing it over here to cool down. Now, as it cools down, we can keep working with it too, because we have a lot of different things that we need to add. We're gonna start by adding some candied fruit. Lebkuchen are, let's say, the great-grandfather of the modern fruitcake. So here, I've got some candied orange peels. Over here, this is some candied citron, maybe not one you've heard of, but you can find it in the grocery stores, particularly around the holidays, because people like to put it in modern fruitcake. But if you can't find citron, candied lemon makes a great substitution. And most of these you can find in a baking supply store, or oftentimes at candy stores that sell bulk ingredients as well. So this is about, I have to check my recipe, this is about 1/2 pound of candied orange peel, which is going to get stirred right in here. And then after the orange peel, I'm going to add my citron. The citron you also want about a ½ pound, the same quantity as your orange peel. I'm doing maybe half and half citron, and I'm going to put a little lemon peel in there too. Old recipes were often intended as guidelines, and the cooks that were making them had to make substitutions, or they changed things based on what their preference was. We get very nervous when we cook today. Our recipes are so laid out, down to the T, down to the measurement. So a lot of people panic when they look to older recipes that are not as specific, but it's also coming back into fashion to say, you know what, this is the way I like this recipe, you should make it to your taste too. So there's my citron, and we'll put a little bit of the lemon in too. And then stir it up. So now we've got a lot of nice citrus flavors in there. Now we need to add the spice that Lebkuchen is famous for. So a lot of spices going in. I'm going to add 2 ounces of ground cinnamon. After the cinnamon, I'm going to add about a ¼ ounce of ground cloves, 2 teaspoons of ground mace. Again, this is a harder spice to find. Mace is the outer shell of a nutmeg. A nutmeg is really a nut. So you could substitute nutmeg if you'd like to at this point, although it does taste different to use actual mace. So these 2 are going to go in here as well. And then mix it up real good. Now this, as you can see, is a thick batter. It's just like candy making. So this is cooling, and it's getting thicker as we speak. So it's important that it cools down, but it's also important that it stays warm enough that you can mix all your ingredients. There's our spice. You can see how dark and rich it's looking. Now we need to add the zest of 2 lemons, and I need to rinse these, so I'll be right back. Okay, this is a lemon zester. If you don't have this, you can use any kind of small grater. In a pinch, I've even used kind of my upright Parmesan cheese grater. To zest it, you're just taking off the yellow part. See? You don't want any of the white stuff because the white stuff is bitter. You just want the yellow part. Now I know it seems weird, but next time you juice a lemon, think about it. It's not necessarily the juice that tastes like a lemon. The juice tastes of acid. The oil of lemon, what really gives something lemon flavor, is all in the zest. So this is why we're just using the outside of this lemon. All right, zested 2 lemons, mix that up too. Really got to put that elbow grease in there. Last, you need a little bit of baking soda. Chemical leaveners were commercially available by the middle of the 19th century. Baking soda was one of the earliest too. Much easier to work with than either yeast or beating a lot of eggs by hand, which was the only way to make things rise before these. All right, that's that mixed up. One of the last things to go in before we add flour. See, look, I'm already a mess. Again, it's not easy to work with. This is Kirsch. Kirschwasser is a cherry liqueur that's popular in Germany. You can really use one of 3 liquid ingredients in this. Kirsch, coffee, really strong coffee, has also been seen in recipes from this time, and also a liquor called Batavia Arak, which is a rum that's made from palm sugar and was popular in the 19th century. It's available again. You can find it in specialty liquor stores. Kirsch, on the other hand, is pretty easy to find. The recipe calls for a glassful, which is another difficulty of old recipes. Proportions. What is a glassful? Well, it usually means about 4 ounces, but I found that this recipe needs a little bit more liquid, so feel free to be liberal or to have a glass of water on hand as you start to mix in the flour. You might need to add a little bit more liquid. It's important to wait until this cools, because if you don't, if it's too hot when you add the alcohol is going to steam off and you lose a lot of great flavor. Here comes the flour. Now, the original recipe calls for 2 3/4 of a pound flour, which I have found to be a lot. So we're gonna add a little bit at a time and keep mixing it until we get a good dough, and then we're just gonna go with it. You've really got to work it in, and at some point, you might have to get in there with your hands too. All right, this is a point where you need to start kneading it with your hands. I start in the bowl and then I'll bring it out to a work surface and work on it from there too. You just want to incorporate as much flour as possible without making it too crumbly that it falls apart. If that does happen, put a little more liquid back in, either more kirsch, more water, something like that. You want to incorporate as much flour as possible, and I do that by first pouring it into the bowl, and then eventually I start pulling it out in handfuls and working it on a cookboard like this, a cutting board, or any kind of work surface. And eventually you'll get something that looks like this. It's got a lot of flour in it, but it's not crumbly. It's a little crumbly, but it's still pretty pliable and it's sticking together. Now with these, what you'll do is you can either press them into a baking pan, or the original recipe says to form them into oblong loaves. Just make sure you form them all the same size so they bake at the same temperature and same time. And then after they bake, that's when you cut it almost like a biscotti. Wait for it to cool a little bit, then just use a heavy knife to cut it. You can cut them again too to get cookies the size you want. And after they bake, they'll look a little something like this. There you go. These went in for 350 for about an hour. Mine got a little overdone on top. Stove I'm unfamiliar with. Hopefully you know your oven better. But you see it's just, you know, looks like a dried out version of what we were making. The original recipe also says once you've kneaded your dough and formed them into your loaves, let them sit overnight, then bake them, and then you cut them. And traditionally, Lebkuchen should sit around for 2 to 6 months before you eat them. That's what even the contemporary recipes say. So try them yourself hot, or do the traditional way and stick them in a tin on a shelf for the next 6 months and enjoy them maybe just before Christmas time. So there you have it. This is a Lebkuchen recipe from the 1840s. Would have been appropriate for Caroline Schneider to use. If you want to give this a go at home, check it out on our blog. I'll have the original recipe as well as a transcribed, updated version. But if you don't want to do all of the heavy labor in your own kitchen, then you should probably just come to the Tenement Talks on April 3rd. We'll be giving you a behind-the-scenes look at Caroline Schneider's kitchen. Hope to see you there.